Careful with that safe, I said from the end of my driveway. You have no idea whose evidence you're carrying. Both men froze. It was 6:18 on a Wednesday morning, cold enough for my breath to hang above the pavement. The neighborhood sprinklers hissed across perfect lawns, and somewhere behind me a garbage truck groaned through another street. But all I could hear was metal scraping against concrete. 2 Briarwood HOA security guards were standing outside my garage. One held the front end of my black steel safe. The other had the back. My front door was open behind them. Not unlocked. Open. The deadbolt plate hung from the frame by one bent screw. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then the taller guard smiled. "Morning, sir." His name tag read Caldwell. I already knew his name. That was the part he didn't know. I looked at the safe. 42 inches tall. 300 pounds empty. Scratches along the bottom where they had dragged it across my hardwood floor. "Put it down." Caldwell adjusted his grip. "We're conducting an authorized property seizure." I almost laughed. Authorized by whom? The HOA. He said it like that settled everything. His partner, Travis Boone, kept looking toward their white security SUV parked at the curb. Engine running. Rear hatch open. Ready to leave. I noticed everything. Occupational habit. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 44 years old, and for 18 years I've worked major property crimes for the county sheriff's office. Burglary. Fraud. Organized theft. The kind of cases where nobody makes one giant mistake. They make 20 small ones and assume nobody is patient enough to connect them. For the previous 7 months, I had been connecting them. Luxury watches disappearing during HOA compliance inspections. Cash missing from vacant homes. Jewelry reported stolen after residents left for vacation. 3 firearms taken from a retired contractor's locked collection. Every victim lived inside Briarwood. Every burglary happened shortly after an HOA violation or inspection notice. And somehow, every security camera covering the relevant street experienced a convenient outage. We had suspects. We had patterns. What we didn't have was the clean piece of evidence that tied the thefts directly to the people wearing Briarwood security uniforms. Until that morning, Caldwell nodded toward the safe. "You have unpaid association penalties." "No, I don't." "Landscaping violations. Vehicle violations. Administrative fees. My dues are current." "That's not what our records show." I stepped closer. Boone stiffened. "Stay back, sir." I stopped. Not because he told me to. Because my doorbell camera was recording him telling the homeowner to stay back while he carried stolen property out of that homeowner's house. Sometimes you don't interrupt good evidence. "You entered my home?" Caldwell sighed. "Emergency Enforcement Authority. Show me the warrant." His smile disappeared. "This isn't a police matter." That sentence almost made me admire him. Almost. I looked past him into my hallway. A muddy boot print marked the hardwood. My office door stood open. Desk drawers pulled out. Cabinet disturbed. This wasn't a lien collection. They had searched the house. And that safe wasn't sitting in the garage when they arrived. It had been bolted inside my office closet, which meant they knew exactly where to look. Boone whispered something. Caldwell answered under his breath. Then they lowered the safe. Concrete scraped underneath it. That sound stayed with me. Caldwell straightened. "If you interfere with an HOA enforcement action, we can have local police remove you." I looked at him. "You should call them." He blinked. "What?" "Call the police." Neither man spoke. I reached slowly into my jacket. Boone's shoulders tightened. I pulled out my badge. Gold shield. County seal. Detective. The morning seemed to go completely silent. Caldwell stared at it. Then at me. The color drained from his face. "You're law enforcement?" I slipped the badge back into my jacket. "Detective Ethan Cole." Boone took one step away from the safe. I watched recognition arrive. Not because he knew me personally. Because he knew the name. 7 months earlier, somebody inside their operation had learned a detective named Cole was investigating the Briarwood burglaries. They just never learned where Detective Cole lived. Caldwell's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Then his eyes moved toward my safe. That was when I understood something worse. They hadn't come for money. They had come looking for something. And inside that safe were copies of photographs, access logs, vehicle records, and case notes connected to the investigation. Caldwell hadn't accidentally picked the wrong house. Someone had sent him to exactly the right one. He just hadn't been told who was waiting there. The first thing Caldwell did after seeing my badge was reach for his radio. I watched his thumb stop halfway to the button. "Go ahead," I said. He stared at me. "Call whoever you were about to call." The The sprinklers kept hissing across the lawn behind him. Boone looked sick. Not scared yet. Sick. There's a difference. Fear makes people move. Guilt makes them calculate. I knew that look because I'd spent 18 years watching it across interview tables. Caldwell finally lowered his hand. There's been a misunderstanding. 5 seconds earlier, I was obstructing an authorized seizure. Now we had a misunderstanding. Interesting how quickly vocabulary changes when a badge appears. Put your hands where I can see them. Both men complied. I called dispatch. Then I photographed everything. The broken deadbolt. Boot prints. Their SUV. The open cargo hatch. The dolly sitting beside my porch. The safe. Especially the safe. While we waited for patrol units, Caldwell started talking. People like him usually do. We were given paperwork. Save it. The HOA authorized us. Save it. We didn't know you were, he stopped. I looked directly at him. Didn't know I was what? Nothing. That sentence mattered. Because innocent contractors say, we didn't know this was illegal. Caldwell almost said something else. We didn't know you were a detective. Meaning the problem wasn't entering a house. The problem was whose house they entered. Sirens arrived 3 minutes later. 2 patrol cars rolled around the corner without lights. Deputy Marquez stepped out first. He'd worked burglary before transferring back to patrol. He recognized me immediately. Then he saw Caldwell. His expression changed. You've got to be kidding me. Caldwell noticed. So did I, you know him? I asked. Marquez looked at Caldwell. His name came up in the Peterson burglary. There it was. Another thread. 7 months earlier, Briarwood had looked ordinary to me. I moved there after my divorce because I wanted quiet. 3 bedrooms. Small yard. 20-minute drive to headquarters. The HOA was annoying, but predictable. Approved paint colors. Trash bin schedules. Parking rules. Nothing I hadn't seen before. Then Harold Peterson called me. Harold lived 6 houses away. Retired machinist. 71. Hands like old leather. He stopped me one evening while I was bringing groceries inside. Detective, can I ask you something? Most neighbors didn't know what unit I worked. Harold did. 3 days earlier, HOA security had entered his backyard during what they called a fence compliance inspection. That weekend, someone broke into his house. No smashed window. No forced door. His late wife's jewelry disappeared. So did $8,000 cash from a bedroom lockbox. The burglars ignored televisions. Ignored tools. Ignored electronics. They knew exactly what they wanted. 2 weeks later, another resident reported almost the same thing. Then another. Different streets. Same pattern. Each victim had recently received an HOA inspection. Each home had been entered cleanly. And each victim said HOA security seemed unusually interested in whether they would be traveling. That was when I opened the case. Quietly. I didn't tell the HOA board I was investigating. I didn't tell neighbors. I certainly didn't tell Caldwell. For months, we built a timeline. Security vehicle GPS records showed gaps. HOA master key logs contained missing entries. Camera systems went offline for 17-minute windows. One name appeared repeatedly on duty schedules. Caldwell. Another appeared beside his. Boone. But patterns aren't convictions. We needed evidence connecting them directly to an unlawful entry. Now they had provided it themselves. Deputy Marquez walked toward my office doorway. Ethan. He pointed down. Mud. Same reddish clay on Caldwell's boots. Marquez followed the prints to the closet. Then he stopped. The steel anchor bolts that had secured my safe to the floor were lying beside a cordless impact wrench. Not mine. I photographed the serial number. Boone saw me do it. His breathing changed. Shorter. Faster. Then I noticed something beside the wrench. A folded sheet of paper. I put on gloves and opened it. My address was printed at the top. Below it, safe, home office closet. Work hours, 7 a.m. 5:00 p.m. Lives alone. I read the last line twice. Wednesday departure, 5:45 a.m. They knew my schedule. Or thought they did. That morning, a canceled interview had brought me home 30 minutes early. 30 minutes. That was the only reason I caught them. Marquez read over my shoulder. Somebody scoped you. I nodded. Caldwell stared at the pavement. Boone wouldn't look at either of us. Then I turned the paper over. There was one handwritten notation on the back. 2 initials. V.H. My stomach tightened. I knew those initials. Vanessa Hart, president of the Briarwood Hills HOA. The woman who had personally denied us access to security records 3 months earlier. I looked at Caldwell. He finally understood why I'd gone quiet. This wasn't two guards freelancing anymore. The trail had just reached the boardroom. Vanessa Hart called me before Caldwell reached the station. That told me two things. First, somebody had warned her. Second, she was scared enough to stop being careful. My phone buzzed while I stood in my kitchen watching a crime scene technician dust the broken deadbolt. Vanessa Hart. I let it ring twice. Then answered. Ethan, thank God. Her voice was breathless. Too breathless. What happened? I just heard there was some terrible confusion involving our security team. Confusion. There was that word again. I looked through the window. Caldwell was sitting handcuffed in Deputy Marquez's patrol car. What did you hear? That they mistakenly entered your property during a collections action. Mistakenly? Yes. Obviously, nobody intended. They removed a bolted safe from my office. Silence. 1 second. 2. Then Vanessa exhaled. I'm sure there's an explanation. There usually is. She didn't like my tone. Ethan, before this becomes something damaging to the community, perhaps we should meet privately. That sentence went straight into my notes. What would damage the community? You know what I mean. No. Explain it. Another pause. Then her voice cooled. I'm trying to help you. Vanessa always sounded like that when she wanted control. 56 years old. Former property manager. Perfect auburn hair. Pearl earrings. A navy Mercedes that never seemed to collect dust. She had been Briarwood HOA president for 5 years and ran board meetings like congressional hearings conducted inside a country club. I first met her 2 weeks after moving in. She knocked on my door at 7:30 Saturday morning, holding a violation notice because my unmarked county-issued sedan had been parked overnight in my driveway. Commercial vehicles aren't permitted. It isn't commercial. It appears institutional. I stared at her. Institutional. The community has aesthetic standards. I showed her the registration. She barely glanced at it. Rules protect everyone, Mr. Cole. That sentence became Vanessa's favorite weapon. Rules protect everyone. Unless those rules applied to her. During the burglary investigation, we discovered Briarwood Security possessed master access codes for several community-managed properties. Vanessa claimed they were used only during emergencies. Then Harold Peterson identified Caldwell as one of the guards who inspected his yard 3 days before his wife's jewelry disappeared. I requested security schedules. Vanessa delayed. I requested vehicle logs. She claimed privacy concerns. I obtained a formal records demand. Half the digital files suddenly became corrupted. That was when coincidence stopped feeling like coincidence. But Vanessa was smart. She never signed anything directly connecting herself to a burglary. Until someone wrote V.H. on the surveillance sheet found inside my house. I kept her talking. Vanessa, who authorized the seizure? I don't handle daily enforcement. Who does? Our compliance department. Name? I'd have to check. Your HOA president. I oversee policy, Ethan. I don't micromanage. Behind me, the technician called my name. He was kneeling beside the safe. I walked over. What? He pointed at the locking mechanism. Fresh scratches surrounded the keypad. They tried opening it before moving it. My grip tightened around the phone. Vanessa was still talking. And I really think involving law enforcement before the board reviews this internally would be unnecessarily aggressive. I looked at the damaged keypad. Vanessa. Yes. Law enforcement is already involved. Silence. You're speaking to it. She hung up. No goodbye. Just click. I stared at the screen. Then the technician called me again. He had found something underneath the safe. A small black plastic rectangle. At first I thought it was debris. Then I recognized the shape. Micro SD card. I put on gloves. The card had probably fallen behind the safe months earlier. My handwriting was visible on a tiny evidence label. BH04. Briarwood case. I remembered it immediately. A backup copy from a resident's doorbell camera. Footage we thought had been lost after the original file corrupted. The card contained video from the night of the 4th burglary. A white Briarwood security SUV entered the street at 1:13 a.m. It left 19 minutes later. We had never identified the driver. Until now. At headquarters, I loaded the card onto an isolated workstation. Grainy night footage filled the monitor. SUV. Headlights. Timestamp. Then the driver stepped out beneath a street lamp. Caldwell. No surprise. But 12 seconds later, the passenger door opened. A woman emerged. Auburn hair. Dark coat. Pearl earrings caught the porch light for half a second. I leaned closer. Vanessa Hart. There she was. Not in a boardroom. Not signing violation letters. Standing outside a home burglarized 17 minutes later. My lieutenant watched over my shoulder. Well, he said quietly. I froze the frame. Vanessa's face stared back at me through digital grain. 7 months of missing records. Disabled cameras. Selective inspections. Stolen property. My broken door. My safe sitting halfway to their SUV. It finally formed one picture. And suddenly I understood why they had come to my house. They weren't looking for cash. Someone knew I had evidence. The only mistake they made was assuming all of it was inside that safe. I looked at the image again, then at Vanessa's initials on the surveillance sheet. She had spent months hiding behind HOA authority. Now I had her standing inside her own case. And she still didn't know I had the video. Vanessa made her second mistake at 10:43 that night. She sent me an email, not from her personal account, from the official Briarwood Hills HOA address. Subject: Confidential resolution. I was sitting in the property crimes office with cold coffee beside my keyboard when it arrived. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Most of the building had gone quiet. I opened the message. Ethan, given today's unfortunate enforcement error, the board is prepared to waive all outstanding violations associated with your property. We would also reimburse reasonable damages to your door and office flooring. In return, we request that this matter remain internal while we complete our review. I read it twice, then forwarded it to my lieutenant. 30 seconds later, he appeared beside my desk. She's offering to make your fines disappear? Apparently. In exchange for silence. She used nicer words. He pulled up a chair. I showed him the frozen image from the micro-SD card. Vanessa beneath the street lamp. Pearl earrings. Caldwell beside the security SUV. My lieutenant leaned closer. We need warrants. Not yet. He looked at me. I pointed at the email. She thinks I only caught the guards. That mattered. If Vanessa knew we had the footage, she might start destroying whatever records remained. If she believed this was still about 2 overeager security employees, she might keep trying to protect herself. And people protecting themselves create evidence. So I answered, Vanessa, I'm willing to hear the board's explanation. Tomorrow afternoon? Her response arrived in 4 minutes. 2 p.m. Clubhouse conference room. Fast. Too fast. The next day, I wore jeans, work boots, and a gray jacket. No visible badge. No uniform. I wanted Vanessa to see a homeowner, not the detective already building probable cause around her. The clubhouse smelled like lemon cleaner and expensive coffee. Vanessa sat at the end of a polished table. 2 board members were with her. Neither looked comfortable. A yellow folder sat in front of Vanessa. She smiled. Ethan, I'm glad we can handle this reasonably. Reasonably sounds good. She opened the folder. Inside were photographs of my house, my driveway, my office window, my county sedan. One photograph showed me leaving at 5:47 a.m. I kept my face neutral. Why does the HOA have surveillance photographs of me? Vanessa didn't blink. Routine compliance documentation. At 5:47 in the morning, security patrols operate 24 hours. I picked up another photograph. It showed the side gate leading toward my office. A handwritten note beneath it read access. Vanessa reached across the table. That shouldn't be in there. I didn't let go. Her fingers stopped. For half a second, we both held opposite ends of the photograph. Then she released it. That moment told me more than any answer could. You knew where my office was. We document property layouts. You knew my schedule. I don't personally manage patrol information. You knew I lived alone. One board member turned toward her. Vanessa's smile hardened. I think this conversation is becoming accusatory. It became accusatory when 2 men broke my door. She closed the folder. Caldwell exceeded his authority. And Boone. The same. So they acted alone? As far as I know. I nodded slowly. Then I asked the question I'd been saving. Where were you on March 14th? Her eyes changed. Barely. But I saw it. What? March 14th. Around 1 in the morning. I have no idea. Think. She leaned back. This is absurd. March 14th was the 4th burglary. The one on the micro-SD card. I watched her left hand move beneath the table. Phone. She was texting someone. Good. I stood. Thanks for your time. Vanessa frowned. That's it. That's it. I walked outside without touching the yellow folder again. My lieutenant was waiting in an unmarked vehicle 2 streets away. Before I reached him, my phone buzzed. Our surveillance team. Caldwell just received a call from Hart. Then another message. Boone's wife left home with 2 duffel bags. Then a third. HOA security supervisor entered Briarwood's storage facility. I climbed into the passenger seat. My lieutenant looked at me. You poked the nest. Yep. 20 minutes later, a judge signed the first search warrant. The storage facility sat behind the community maintenance building, hidden by rows of arborvitae. When deputies opened Unit 12, the smell of dust and cardboard rolled into the night air. Flashlights swept across shelves. Jewelry boxes. Laptops. Watches. Power tools. 3 locked cases. Harold Peterson's engraved silver watch sat inside a plastic evidence bin. His initials were still on the back. H.P. My lieutenant stared around the room. Jesus. I didn't answer. Because on the far wall was a corkboard. Photographs of Briarwood homes covered it. Travel dates. Alarm notes. Inspection schedules. Access codes. Dozens of residents. My house was near the center. A red circle surrounded it. Underneath, someone had written, Cole, safe may contain case files. I stepped closer. Below that was another note. If recovered, delivered directly to V.H. That was the moment the case changed. Vanessa wasn't simply covering for crooked guards. She had sent them into my home. And now her instructions were hanging on a wall under police lights. The storage unit gave us stolen property. The corkboard gave us intent. But the ledger gave us Briarwood. I found it inside a gray filing cabinet behind 3 boxes labeled landscaping receipts. Nothing about the cabinet looked important. Cheap metal. Bent bottom drawer. Dust thick enough to leave fingerprints. But criminals have a habit of hiding valuable things behind boring labels. I pulled the drawer open. Inside were 12 black binders. Each spine carried a year. The newest one was current. I opened it. Addresses. Dates. Violation numbers. Resident schedules. Then columns that had absolutely nothing to do with HOA enforcement. Cash. Jewelry. Electronics. Firearms. Resale. My lieutenant stood beside me. Tell me I'm reading that wrong. You're not. Every burglary had an entry. Harold Peterson. March 3rd. Fence inspection. Away March 6th to 9th. Master bedroom lockbox. Estimated cash. $8,000. Jewelry. $14,500. Beside the entry were 2 initials. C.T.B. Caldwell. Travis Boone. Then another column. Admin. V.H. Vanessa Hart. I felt something cold settle behind my ribs. This wasn't opportunistic theft. It was organized. HOA violation notices identified targets. Compliance inspections mapped houses. Security patrols learned schedules. Master access information got them inside. Then stolen property moved through that storage unit. The HOA wasn't just their cover. It was their information system. By sunrise, we had 3 more warrants. 1 for Briarwood's administrative office. 1 for Caldwell's residence. 1 for Vanessa's financial records. I didn't participate in the search of Vanessa's home. Too personal. Too easy for a defense attorney to argue that the detective whose house she targeted had turned the case into revenge. So I stayed at headquarters. Watched evidence numbers appear on my screen. At 8:37 a.m., investigators recovered $46,000 in cash from Caldwell's garage. At 9:12, Boone's wife voluntarily surrendered 2 bags containing watches, jewelry, and electronics. At 10:03, Briarwood's server administrator gave us access to an archive Vanessa claimed had been deleted months earlier. That archive was the earthquake. Every corrupted security log still existed. Every master key request. Every inspection schedule. Every email. Vanessa hadn't destroyed the records. She had hidden them in an administrative backup folder. At 11:26, my lieutenant walked into the conference room carrying 6 printed pages. He dropped them in front of me. Read the 3rd email. Sender, Vanessa Hart. Recipient, Caldwell. Subject, Peterson. Complete inspection Tuesday. Confirmed travel schedule. Side entrance preferred. I kept reading. Another homeowner. Another inspection. Another burglary. Then my address. Cole has been asking questions again. Caldwell replied, want us to watch him? Vanessa, already doing it. Find out what he has. My jaw tightened. Next email. Caldwell, safe in office closet. Bolted down. Vanessa, can you remove it? Caldwell, need Boone and equipment. Then the final message. Sent at 9:48 p.m. the night before they entered my house. Vanessa, tomorrow. He leaves before 6. Take the entire safe. No mistakes. I read that sentence 3 times. No mistakes. My lieutenant sat across from me. You okay? I slid the pages back. Get the prosecutor. By noon, Vanessa knew something was wrong. She called twice. I didn't answer. Then she emailed. Then texted. Finally, at 1:17 p.m., she walked into sheriff's headquarters with an attorney. Pearl earrings. Navy suit. Perfect hair. Same Vanessa. Except her hands were trembling. I watched through the interview room glass. She kept asking why she was there. Her attorney demanded to know whether she was under arrest. The prosecutor entered with a folder. Not thick. It didn't need to be. 1 photograph. 1 ledger page. 3 emails. 1 still image from the March 14th video. And the photograph of my safe halfway across my driveway. Vanessa looked through them. Her face changed with every page. When she reached her own email, take the entire safe. And no mistakes, she stopped. The room went silent. Her attorney leaned toward her. Don't say anything. For once, Vanessa listened. The prosecutor explained the investigation. Conspiracy, burglary, possession and trafficking of stolen property, fraud-related offenses, potential obstruction tied to evidence targeting. The final charges would depend on what the full investigation supported. Vanessa stared at the table. Then she asked one question. Who found the backup? Nobody answered. That was all I needed to hear. Not, what backup? Who found it? She knew. I stepped away from the glass. 7 months earlier, Vanessa had told me rules protected everyone. She was finally right. Because rules also preserve evidence. Chain of custody, search warrants, server logs, timestamps, recorded calls, paper trails. She had built her little operation by assuming HOA authority made people obedient. But authority leaves records. And records are patient. That afternoon, Briarwood residents received notice that the HOA president had been suspended pending investigation. By evening, people were gathering outside the clubhouse. Angry, confused, afraid. Dozens of them were wondering whether their own homes appeared in those binders. Some did. And as our evidence team began matching recovered property to victims, I realized the case was much bigger than my safe. My house had simply been the mistake that opened the door. They thought they were stealing the investigation. Instead, they carried it straight into daylight. The first victim walked into our temporary evidence room, carrying an empty jewelry box. Harold Peterson. He held it against his chest with both hands. The room smelled like cardboard, stale coffee, and the latex gloves our technicians had been wearing for 12 straight hours. Tables stretched wall to wall. Watches, laptops, cameras, tools, jewelry sealed inside transparent evidence bags. Property stolen from people who had spent months being told their burglaries were unrelated. Harold stopped beside table 4. Then his breathing changed. That's hers. He pointed through the plastic. A silver bracelet. Small blue stones. Nothing flashy. My wife wore that every anniversary for 43 years. Nobody spoke. Harold's wife had been dead for 3. He reached toward the evidence bag, then stopped himself. Can I? Not yet. He nodded. His eyes stayed on the bracelet. That moment changed the case for me. Until then, Vanessa's operation had been emails, timestamps, access logs, and inventory numbers. Now it had Harold's hands trembling 6 inches from something he thought he would never see again. Over the next 4 days, 31 residents identified property. A wedding ring, a grandfather's watch, a camera containing photographs of a daughter who had died, tools bought with a first paycheck, cash saved for college tuition. The theft ring hadn't just taken expensive things. They had taken whatever people trusted their homes to protect, and they had used HOA inspections to find them. Then Caldwell asked for a lawyer. And a deal. His attorney contacted the prosecutor Friday morning. By lunch, Caldwell was sitting inside interview room 3 wearing county-issued gray clothing instead of his Briarwood security uniform. No radio. No polished badge. No authority. Just fluorescent light and a recorder blinking red. I watched from behind the glass. Caldwell talked for 2 hours. Vanessa recruited him 3 years earlier. At first, she wanted information. Which residents traveled often? Who lived alone? Who had cameras? Who complained about fines? Then came special inspections. Caldwell and Boone photographed interiors whenever homeowners allowed them inside. Alarm panels, key hooks, safes, medication cabinets, gun storage. Vanessa kept profiles. If a resident refused entry, she created violations until they became cooperative. The inspections weren't enforcement. They were reconnaissance. Then Caldwell said my name. The room seemed to tighten. Cole became a problem. The prosecutor leaned forward. How? He kept requesting records. Did you know he was a detective? Eventually, my jaw tightened. When Caldwell looked at the table, about 3 weeks before his safe. 3 weeks. That meant part 1 hadn't been random at all. They knew exactly who I was. The prosecutor asked the obvious question. Then why enter his house? Caldwell swallowed. Vanessa said the investigation was getting too close. What did she believe was inside the safe? Case files. Copies of evidence. Maybe storage devices. And what were you instructed to do? Take everything. The red recording light kept blinking. What would happen to it? Caldwell hesitated. She said she'd handle it. Same phrase. Always the same phrase. I'll handle it. For years, Vanessa had used those words to make problems disappear. Violation disputes. Missing records. Security complaints. Now those words were becoming evidence. Caldwell gave investigators another location. A rented commercial garage 12 miles outside Briarwood. The warrant was signed before sunset. Inside, investigators found empty jewelry cases, packaging materials, shipping labels, and detailed records linking stolen property to online resale accounts. But in the back office, behind a false cabinet panel, they found something more important. A hard drive. Vanessa's private archive. It contained spreadsheets tracking sales, payments, guard percentages, HOA administrative expenses used to disguise reimbursements, and a column labeled VH. The numbers added up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. My lieutenant stared at the screen. This isn't a burglary crew. No, it was an enterprise. The HOA gave Vanessa addresses. Violations gave her leverage. Inspections gave her access. Security gave her manpower. And respectable paperwork made everything look ordinary from the street. That was the genius of it. And the weakness. Because every layer generated records. By Monday, warrants froze several accounts tied to the operation. The HOA board held another emergency meeting. This time, residents didn't whisper. They demanded records. They demanded resignations. They demanded to know why the people hired to protect their neighborhood had been cataloging their valuables. Vanessa didn't attend. Her chair sat empty beneath the Briarwood logo. I stood near the back. Harold stood beside me. He leaned closer. You think they'll convict her? I watched residents passing copies of financial reports down the rows. That's not my decision. He nodded, then smiled faintly. Detective answer. Yeah. Outside, the evening sprinklers clicked on. Same hiss I'd heard the morning Caldwell carried my safe across the driveway. Funny how ordinary sounds survive extraordinary things. My phone vibrated. The prosecutor. Indictment approved. I read it once, then slipped the phone away. Harold looked at me. I didn't need to explain. Because across the room, board members were already removing Vanessa Hart's nameplate from the president's desk. She had built her power behind locked doors, private files, and people too intimidated to question her. Now every door was open. And this time, we had the warrant. Vanessa Hart was arrested at 6:42 on a Tuesday morning. No sirens. No dramatic chase. Just 2 unmarked cars stopping outside her house while sprinklers clicked across the lawn. I wasn't there. I watched the body camera footage later. Vanessa opened the door wearing a gray robe, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders. For the first time since I had known her, she didn't look like the president of anything. The lead investigator showed her the warrant. Her eyes moved across the page. Conspiracy, burglary-related charges, trafficking in stolen property, fraud, obstruction allegations tied to the attempt to recover evidence from my home. Her attorney would fight the exact counts later. That morning, only one sentence mattered. Turn around, please. Vanessa looked past the investigators toward Briarwood. Perfect lawns, stone mailboxes, morning commuters slowing down, neighbors watching through blinds. Then she placed her hands behind her back. Click. Handcuffs are quieter than people imagine. That sound lasted less than a second. But after years of Vanessa hiding behind HOA authority, it felt louder than every gavel she had ever slammed at a board meeting. Caldwell's cooperation accelerated everything. Boone followed 3 days later. Once Caldwell started talking, Boone apparently decided loyalty had become expensive. He confirmed the inspection system, the target lists, the resale operation. the missing security footage. Most importantly, he confirmed Vanessa personally selected certain homes, mine included. The prosecutor asked him why. Boone looked toward the recorder. Because Detective Cole had evidence. What evidence? We didn't know. So you were ordered to steal a safe without knowing what was inside? Yes. By whom? Boone swallowed. Vanessa Hart. There it was again. My name had turned their operation against itself. They picked my house because I was investigating them. And by picking my house, they gave us the direct evidence we had spent 7 months trying to obtain. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, especially the judge. The preliminary hearing took place 6 weeks later. I sat behind the prosecution table. Vanessa entered wearing a dark suit. No pearls this time. She looked toward me once. Only once. Her expression wasn't angry. That surprised me. It was disbelief. Like some part of her still couldn't understand how HOA guards carrying one black safe had turned into search warrants, frozen accounts, recovered property, cooperating witnesses, and a criminal case. The prosecutor began with Harold. He described the inspection, his trip, coming home to find his wife's jewelry missing. Then the silver bracelet appeared on the evidence monitor. Harold's voice cracked. He recovered, kept talking. Next came the digital analyst. Security logs, deleted records, administrative backups, then the storage unit photographs. Shelves of stolen property filled the courtroom screen. Vanessa stared downward. Finally, the prosecutor displayed the corkboard. My house appeared near the center. Cole, safe may contain case files. Then the instruction underneath. If recovered, deliver directly to V.H. The courtroom went still. Vanessa's attorney argued the initials could refer to anyone. The prosecutor didn't respond immediately. He changed the slide. Vanessa's email appeared. Take the entire safe. No mistakes. Timestamp. Account verification. Server authentication. No ambiguity. Then came the microSD footage. March 14th. 1:13 a.m. Caldwell exited the Briarwood security SUV. 12 seconds later, Vanessa stepped out beneath the street lamp. A woman sitting behind me whispered, "Oh my God." I kept my eyes on the screen. That tiny memory card had spent months trapped behind my safe. Ignored. Forgotten. Waiting. Sometimes evidence doesn't disappear. Sometimes it just waits for the right person to move the furniture. The judge found sufficient cause for the case to proceed. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered around the steps. I avoided them. This wasn't my victory lap. I drove back to Briarwood. My repaired front door closed with a clean metallic click. Inside my office, the safe stood exactly where it had before. New anchor bolts. Scratches still visible along one side. I could have repainted it. I didn't. Those scratches reminded me how close they came. I opened the safe. The case copies were still there. But now the investigation occupied 12 evidence boxes downtown. Too large for any safe. Too documented for anyone to make disappear. That evening, Harold stopped by. He carried a small wooden box. Inside was his wife's silver bracelet. The court had finally authorized its return. He held it up under my porch light. Blue stones flashed. "She's home," he said. I nodded. For the first time in months, neither of us talked about Vanessa. We didn't need to. Across the neighborhood, Briarwood residents were changing locks, replacing board members, and demanding independent audits. The community Vanessa had controlled through fear was learning how to ask questions. And inside the clubhouse, the security office had been emptied. Caldwell's desk was gone. Boone's radio was gone. Vanessa's nameplate was gone. Only the old HOA motto remained on the wall. Security, integrity, community. I stood beneath it the next morning and almost smiled. They had treated those words like decoration. Now the residents were making them mean something. Vanessa thought stealing my safe would bury her case. Instead, she gave me the one thing every detective waits for. A mistake the evidence could prove. The trial started 11 months after I caught Caldwell carrying my safe across the driveway. By then, Briarwood looked normal again. That was the strange part. Lawns still got cut on Saturdays. Kids still rode bicycles past the clubhouse. Sprinklers still clicked on before sunrise. But inside Courtroom 4, the version of Briarwood Vanessa had built was being dismantled one document at a time. The prosecutor saved my testimony for the third day. When I walked to the witness stand, Vanessa watched me. No smile. No anger. Just that same disbelief. I raised my hand. Swore the oath. Then the prosecutor placed a photograph on the monitor. My driveway. 6:18 a.m. Caldwell and Boone. My black safe between them. Detective Cole, what did you observe? 2 HOA security guards removing my safe from my residence. Did they have permission? No. A warrant? No. Any lawful authority to enter your home? No. The prosecutor changed the image. Broken deadbolt. Mud on hardwood. Open drawers. The cordless impact wrench beside the anchor bolts. Then came the surveillance sheet. Safe. Home office closet. Lives alone. Wednesday departure. 5:45 a.m. Vanessa looked down. I remembered standing in that hallway 11 months earlier, reading those words for the first time. Back then, they felt invasive. Now they looked desperate. The prosecutor asked what was stored inside the safe. Copies of investigative materials related to the Briarwood burglary case. A murmur moved through the gallery. And were the defendants aware you were investigating? Evidence later showed they were. Next slide. Vanessa's email. Cole has been asking questions again. Then Caldwell's response. Want us to watch him? Vanessa, already doing it. Find out what he has. The courtroom became so quiet I could hear the ventilation system. Then the final email appeared. Tomorrow. He leaves before 6. Take the entire safe. No mistakes. The prosecutor let it remain on screen. No explanation needed. Vanessa's attorney stood for cross-examination. He tried to make the investigation sound personal. You were angry when you discovered your home had been entered. Yes. You were angry your property was damaged. Yes. You wanted Mrs. Hart punished. No, he paused. No. I wanted the evidence followed. He stepped closer. Even though you were personally involved? That's why other investigators handled searches involving her. He changed direction. You expect this jury to believe you remained completely objective? I looked toward the evidence monitor. No. I expect them to believe timestamps, video, server logs, fingerprints, recovered property, and your client's emails. He stopped. The prosecutor hid a smile. Vanessa didn't. The next witness was Caldwell. He walked into court wearing a plain shirt and looked 10 years older. He admitted everything. The inspections, target lists, travel schedules, the storage unit, the safe. Then the prosecutor asked who gave the order. Caldwell pointed. Vanessa Hart. Vanessa closed her eyes. The final blow came from the digital analyst. He reconstructed the deleted HOA records across a timeline. Every inspection appeared in blue. Every burglary in red. The pattern covered the screen. Blue, red, blue, red. Again and again. Then my house appeared. Inspection surveillance. Internal emails. Entry. Safe removal. Arrest. The entire operation ended on one line. The jury deliberated for hours. I spent most of that time outside with Harold. He carried his wife's bracelet in his pocket now. Said he liked having it close. At 4:37 p.m. the bailiff opened the courtroom doors. Verdict. We returned. Vanessa stood beside her attorney. The foreperson read the findings. Guilty on the major conspiracy and burglary-related counts presented to the jury. Additional findings followed. I didn't celebrate. Harold didn't either. He just exhaled. Long and slow. Vanessa remained standing. For years, she had believed authority meant being the person who issued the notice, controlled the meeting, possessed the keys. But real authority looked different. It looked like warrants signed by judges. Evidence sealed and numbered. Witnesses under oath. A jury answering questions she couldn't intimidate away. Weeks later, sentencing filled the courtroom again. The judge spoke about betrayal of community trust. About exploiting access. About turning neighborhood enforcement into a system for selecting victims. Then he looked directly at Vanessa. You used the appearance of authority to facilitate theft and attempted to interfere with the investigation by targeting the detective assigned to expose it. Vanessa stared straight ahead. The judge imposed the sentence. Her shoulders dropped. That was it. No screaming. No dramatic confession. Just consequence. Afterward, I drove home alone. My porch light came on automatically. I walked into the office and rested my hand on the scratched side of the safe. They had picked the wrong house. Not because I was tougher. Not because I carried a badge. Because they assumed stealing evidence could erase the truth. They never understood the first rule of a good investigation. Evidence doesn't need to be powerful. It only needs to survive long enough to be heard. The first morning after Vanessa's sentencing, I woke up at 5:43. No alarm. Habit. For a few seconds, I stayed in bed listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No metal scraping across concrete. No security SUV idling outside. Just rain tapping softly against the bedroom window. I made coffee and walked downstairs. The repaired deadbolt clicked behind me as I stepped onto the porch. Across Briarwood, porch lights glowed through the gray morning. Everything looked ordinary. But ordinary felt different now. The old HOA security company was gone. The board terminated its contract within 48 hours of Caldwell's arrest. Every master access code had been canceled. Residents voted to require warrants, owner consent, or documented emergencies before anyone representing the HOA could enter private property. Inspection records became accessible online. Security cameras were moved to an independent system the board couldn't quietly switch off. And no HOA officer could authorize an interior inspection alone. Vanessa had spent years building power by keeping information private. Briarwood rebuilt itself by making information visible. Funny how that works. 3 months after the trial, the clubhouse held a community meeting. I almost didn't go. Then Harold called. "You're coming." That sounded less like an invitation. It was. So I went. The clubhouse smelled like fresh paint and coffee. The old security office had been converted into a records room with glass walls. No hidden cabinets. No private corkboards. No target lists. Residents filled nearly every chair. Some were victims. Some had never lost anything, but had spent years paying fines to people they now understood had been watching them for reasons that had nothing to do with grass height. At the front sat 31 small numbered boxes. Recovered property. The court had cleared another group of items for return. One by one, names were called. A woman recovered her grandmother's earrings. A contractor got back an engraved watch. A young couple recovered a camera containing the only surviving photographs from their honeymoon. Nobody applauded loudly. It wasn't that kind of moment. People held things, turned them over, remembered. Harold sat beside me, wearing his wife's silver bracelet looped carefully around 2 fingers. "You know," he whispered. "She started all this because she thought nobody would question an inspection." I nodded. That's usually how abuse works. Small. Normal. He looked at me. I explained. The dangerous stuff rarely introduces itself as dangerous. It arrives as procedure. A form. A fee. Someone saying they're authorized. My mind went back to Caldwell standing in my driveway. "We're conducting an authorized property seizure." For words designed to make me step aside. That was their entire system. Look official. Sound confident. Count on compliance. They just used it on the wrong person. After the meeting, I walked home. The evening air smelled like wet grass. Sprinklers clicked somewhere down the street. When I reached my driveway, I stopped. The scratches were still there. 2 parallel lines across the concrete where the safe had dragged that morning. I had considered pressure washing them away. Never did. Inside, the safe remained bolted to my office floor. Same black steel. Same damaged paint along the bottom edge. But something had changed. There were no active Briarwood case files inside anymore. The investigation was closed. The evidence belonged in county storage until every appeal and property disposition was complete. So the safe held ordinary things again. My passport, insurance documents, my father's watch, a photograph of my daughter from middle school. Things a safe was supposed to protect. I closed the door. Clunk. Turned the handle. Then I noticed something on my desk. The original surveillance sheet. A certified copy, released from my personal records. Safe, home office closet. Work hours, 7 a.m. 5:00 p.m. Lives alone. Wednesday departure, 5:45 a.m. I turned it over. V.H. 2 letters. That tiny notation had once been the first crack in the wall. Now Vanessa's name was attached to court records, convictions, recovered property, and an entire criminal operation exposed through evidence she tried to steal. I placed the sheet inside a folder. Not the safe. The desk. Where I could see it. Because detectives spend careers learning one lesson criminals never seem to believe. You don't need to catch every lie immediately. You don't need to shout louder. You don't need to scare the person who thinks they control the room. You document. You preserve. You wait. Eventually, lies begin contradicting each other. Records survive deletion. Witnesses start talking. And somebody makes one mistake too many. Vanessa's mistake weighed 300 pounds. 2 guards carried it across my driveway at 6:18 on a Wednesday morning. They thought they were taking the evidence. Instead, they became evidence. I switched off the office light and walked upstairs. Behind me, the safe sat quietly in the darkness. Still scratched. Still bolted down. Exactly where it belonged. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a detective standing at the end of his own driveway saying, "Careful with that safe," and watching the entire case finally carry itself into his hands.